This is Yesterzine, but for this series, that's not entirely true. This is Todayzine. You see, on Yesterzine, I've been referring to Future Publishing as the only mainstream publisher of games magazines in 2020. And to be fair, they do publish the 4 you're most likely to have heard of, down from 5 at the start of the year after the demise of the official Xbox magazine after the publication of its May issue. In fact though, depending on exactly your definition of mainstream, and to a degree magazine, there's at least another 10 currently published. The rules for this is the magazine must be wholly, or in vast majority, about video games, and must be published on a regular schedule as a physical product in the United Kingdom. So in the hope that you might discover something you want here are all the magazines you can buy now. They fit 3 rough categories: future publishing, kids magazines, and independent publications. This episode, we're going to cover off those mainstream future publishing titles, and if you do like the idea of any of these, sign up, because first, a discussion on circulation. It's a hard time to publish a print magazine. This should not be a surprise to anyone. Business being what it is, it's only properly possible to get circulation figures for 2 of the current magazines: Official PlayStation and PC Gamer. So let's start with those 2. PC Gamer. Circulations in the UK are provided by the Audit Bureau of Circulations, but a magazine has to be signed up to it. As a free user, we can only get the latest figures, which for PC Gamer are 10,942 copies a month, made up of about 2/3 subs and 1/3 paid single copies, with about the same ratio of print to digital. Without being too blunt about it, this is the lowest circulation I have ever seen a magazine print. A figure of 11,000 got Amiga format killed. Amstrad Action's last figure was 15,000, and by that point it had been reduced to a 24-page pamphlet. Amiga Power was closed with an 18,000 figure. PC Gamer has a few advantages. It shares a lot of its editorial with the US edition, and it's supported by, and acts as something of an advert for, a fairly successful website. But that's a pitiful circulation. That's them writing, designing, subbing and editing, as well as printing and posting 7,000 paper copies, for a total of probably less than £50,000 a month if you take into account the cheaper digital and subscription copies. Worse, last year was 12,708, about 20% higher. For 2017, 15,259. They actually stopped printing them for a while, but we're on less than half of the 2013 figure now. If that's not enough to convince you, the latest issue as of this writing is June 2020. It's just lost 16 pages, and in common with all future mags at the moment, physical copies are not being sent to stores. If you want a PC magazine to exist, unsubscribe right now. PC Gamer is $5.99 a month in print these days, and you can get 12 for the price of 10 by subscribing and get this weird looking wireless charging mousepad into the bargain. You can get a digital sub for £2.38 an issue. PC Gamer, like all future magazines, can be had as part of an £8 a month Readly sub, although I have doubts reading it there is going to aid its survival any. Is PC Gamer actually worth buying though? Well, mainly if the concept of a paper format is still of use to you. They've been smart. For instance, the news section is just a couple of pages because they know you'll have found most stuff ahead of publishing deadlines. The bulk of the magazine is reviews and previews. Here's where it falls down a little. The majority of the reviews are on the website in word-for-word identical format. This is my point about them cross-supporting each other, but if you don't mind reading on a screen and just want reviews, the big games are on the site. There are differences though. In the copy pictured, reviews of Hunting Game Rev, Puzzler Pointy End, and Papers, Please Book with Email, Pancom OS appear in more detail in the magazine and aren't given a score on the website. All 3 of those, though, are free games anyway, so you can go and decide for yourself fairly easily. Even some features like the group test of CPU coolers appeared on the website in early March, nearly 2 months ahead of the print magazine. Towards the back of the magazine are the magazine-only pages, mostly retrospective and rediscovery, along with some mod reviews and how-tos. If that and reading things on paper is enough for you, is a decision for you. Personally, I'd subscribe to 3 magazines on this list and rely on a combination of Readly and single digital copies for the others. PC Gamer is one of the others. But if you personally are a PC gamer and like there being a PC-only games title, I'll spoil the list for you now. This is it. And if you want it to exist in 12, or given the current global situation even in 3 months, then I suggest you go buy yourself a mousepad with 12 magazines attached. PlayStation Official Magazine. The other magazine that lets us know its sales is the one remaining official magazine, PlayStation Official Magazine, which is, at an on-the-surface healthier, 18,776. But that was down well over 10% year on year, even before the whole lethal pandemic funsies. This is easily our newest Future magazine, dating from as late as 2006, but it really traces the lineage back to the official UK PlayStation magazine, note the shuffled words in the name, in October 1995. When the PS2 rolled around, rather than fold that coverage into official PlayStation, Future launched an official UK PlayStation 2 magazine instead, presumably in deference to the different disc formats making a unified cover disc impossible. They ran alongside each other right from 2000 to 2004, such was the longevity of the PlayStation 1. Future repeated the same trick when the PS3 launched, although confusingly called it just PlayStation Official Magazine, even though official PS2 would run for another 2 years. And it's that magazine we have now, numbering 100 pages and costing you $5.99 in physical form, even though the disc is long gone. Their features game is strong. The reviews don't even start until 2/3 of the way through the latest issue, and unlike PC Gamer, I can't find them sharing anything but the most basic repeating copy with Future's website. Perhaps that's because their web presence is a corner of Games Radar rather than their own site. As with basically every magazine on this list, there's no specific competition here. PlayStation Official is the only magazine exclusively dedicated to the PS series. So if that's all you want and you want paper, this is where you go. And to be fair, subs are cheap. They'll ship you a copy each month for £3 an issue over a year. If you're even cheaper than that, there's often short-term offers on, although you will have just missed the long-running 5 issues for a £5 promotion. The sneaky catch on that is your sub would then immediately ramp up to full price rather than after a year with the straight sub offer. There's a reoccurring theme with Future and their partner My Favourite Magazines, that the small print is usually your friend. Like all Future magazines, you'll also find PlayStation Official on Readly. I like PSO though. The core team has been at the magazine for a very long time. The editor Ian Dale's been there for over 3 years at this point, a long time in magazines, and he's only halfway through the list of longevity amongst the visible faces on the editor's letters page. It shows. It's had a consistent voice and style for a long time, and it's a good one. It's been helped out by the tremendous success of the PS4, sure, but I can't say I'm super surprised it saw off official Xbox. Edge. Next up, the other one we've covered on Yesterzine. Last season, we looked at Edge, issue 5. If you didn't see that episode, it contained previews of the Sony PlayStation and Sega Saturn, and mused whether Atari could have any success with their troubled console, the Jaguar. Edge has been there forever. It launched as the adult-orientated, forward-looking, over-glossy, well-produced, proper games magazine, in contrast to magazines like CVG, which had drifted downwards in age, and more to the point, Future's own Games Master magazine. Now, of course, Edge is rather on its own, although not quite, as we'll see later. Plus, as the younger generation has not taken up mainstream games magazines in the same way, their older and still ageing age group means their approach is now essentially just the default for the few games magazines that survive. The latest issue at the time of writing numbers 116 pages for your £6. Edge has a reputation for being a bit snooty, a little more about the minutiae of gaming and sounding clever rather than a particular love for games. They also had a reputation in the past for giving ideas better marks than games a lot of the time. They memorably gave Grand Theft Auto 3 a 6 out of 10, and Mario Kart Double Dash just a 5. There was a joke for a while that the way to tell a game was really good was that Edge gave it a 7, just as they did with Fallout 3. Disclaimer, they claimed later the GTA 3 score was a typo. Literally no one believes this. Now might be a good time to hop on with Edge. After a long stint, Nathan Brown has just vacated the editorship, in favour of up-and-coming star Jen Simpkins, who is probably half the age of most of her new audience. She comes from official PlayStation, which as mentioned is a good sign. Although, that OPS gave Final Fantasy VII Remake 10 and Edge gave it 7 suggests that the influence isn't being felt just yet. A sub to Edge is on the same terms as official PlayStation, half price for a year, so it's not going to be too expensive to join this train. Retro Gamer. The final Future Publishing mag, and thus our last visit for this episode, is the one I expect to outlive them all. Retro Gamer. I immediately make a fool of myself for earlier suggesting 4 years was a long time for an editor, because Darran Jones has been at the helm of Retro Gamer since 2005, when it published its first issue, number 19. Okay, let me explain that. RG has been passed around a bit. It was launched by Lynne Publishing in late 2003 with Martin Carroll at the helm. But 18 months later, Lynne took a bath, leaving the magazine stranded. Imagine Publishing bought the rights, but what they launched was effectively an entire new magazine completely different from Lynne's, but with a design that is clearly in lineage with the current offer. They also dropped the cover disc and, as mentioned, hired Darran, who was already at Imagine, on magazines such as Games TM, which had a retro section. Nearly 200 issues later, RG is going strong. We don't have circulation figures, but we do know issue 200 at the end of last year was their single biggest selling issue ever. Between that and the fact that at $4.99 the magazine has to be unique in that it's actually £1 cheaper than it was at launch, is why I think it'll be the last Future mag standing. By and large, it deserves to be. No one will ever agree on how much 18, 16, 32-bit or even newer a retro magazine should cover, or even what counts as retro. But RG has always walked that tightrope with as much grace as seems possible. And to be fair, issue 206 has Half-Life on the cover, which seems unretro. But, and you may want to sit down for this, Half-Life is now older than Manic Miner was when RG published its first issue. It's retro. They've not been perfect. The marketing department betrayed the editorial earlier this year by negotiating with the Computer Museum in Cambridge to license their excellent console Top Trumps cards, and then breaking off negotiations just before the magazine itself unknowingly wrote and bundled the same concept with issue 205. They also praised one of AtGame's craptastic Mega Drive clone consoles in the distant past, which suggests whoever was writing that article had taken leave of their ears. Retro Gamer is the public face of retro magazines, but as we'll discover in later episodes, this is the sector that actually has some staying power. That said, it is the only one you will find in Tesco. We have to declare a bias here. It's also the only one that's been kind enough to feature this very channel and its signature show. But equally, this is the one Future magazine I have a physical subscription to, and it's one I intend to maintain. If you want one, again, RG is a half-price subscription for a year, and they'll even throw in a crap Funko Mini thing you can give to your dog. And if that doesn't convince you, long-term editor Darran Jones was kind enough to answer some of our idiot questions from the comfort of his retro shed. For the purposes of narrative continuance, I'll now pretend I asked him these questions live, rather than sending them via a poor and private message. So Darran, who is totally here live, what do you see as being special or interesting about a print gaming magazine in 2020?
Largely the fact they still exist. I mean, let's face it, magazines are thin on the ground nowadays, particularly video game magazines. So the fact that you can get one like Retro Gamer, which is incredibly niche, is just a very, very nice thing in my book. And we do everything we can to ensure that it's a little bit different from all the other video game mags that currently exist, including obviously the ones online, which also cover retro. And that's it, really.
In gaming magazine terms, you've been editor of Retro Gamer for a very long time. What keeps you there?
I get to write about video games for a living. I get to document video game history, basically. Who wouldn't want to do that? It's like, I was very lucky that I got to do this 15 years ago. I took over from Martin Carroll when the magazine went down under Lynne Publishing. I got offered a job because the people knew that I was working on Games TM at the time. And, I've been on the magazine ever since. I don't know of any other editor who's been on a gamer magazine for as long as I have. So you can either take that as, this guy is really passionate about what he does, or man, this guy just can't move on his career whatsoever. But I love what I do at the end of the day, and I've got a great team. I've got great freelancers who get amazing content for us. I get to speak to the people who defined my childhood. I mean, who wouldn't want to do something like that? And I'm very, very lucky. So it's been a crazy ride for the last 15 years. Magazines have changed massively in that time, and hopefully, we'll still be around in another 15 years, and most likely I'll still be here. That's it, really. I just love what I do.
Is there a games magazine other than Retro Gamer you read or subscribe to?
I have a subscription to PC Gamer. I've got an internet subscription, but basically because I've got a Readly account, I just use that for most stuff, and I can keep an eye on stuff. I look at the other retro magazines and stuff like Retro Fusion. I think there's a retro mag in America which I think is just called Retro, but ultimately they're very different magazines to what Retro Gamer is. So I don't really view them as competition any more than they probably view us as competition. We're doing very different things. So I try and look at everything, because ultimately you never know when you might see something that gives you a flash of inspiration. But ultimately, yeah, it's just PC Gamer I subscribe to, and that's iOS of subscription.
What was your favourite games magazine from the Golden Age?
Mean Machines, without a shadow of a doubt. Mean Machines is one of the few magazines where everybody looked like they were having so much fun. It was opening up consoles, which I found massively exciting. And when I first started in video games magazines, I kind of wanted to focus everything on Mean Machines, in that I saw Mean Machines as it's just a group of mates down a pub or at school chatting about video games, and that's kind of how I always took the approach when I was the retro editor, on Games TM, and then obviously when I moved over to Retro Gamer. So that's probably been the most influential magazine, absolutely. And then I have things like I subscribed to Amstrad Action back in the day. Because I was an Amstrad boy, I'd pick up CMVG every now and then. I particularly loved the Paul Davis era, and then I've dabbled with most of the other mags, but Mean Machines was probably my first love because it got me excited about video games.
And finally, why should we buy Retro Gamer?
We're in the middle of a pandemic. There's never been a better time to support a magazine like Retro Gamer. Magazines are closing all the time. It's a sad fact. And, if you can show support to Retro Gamer or any mag you love in that respect, whether it's a gamer mag, whether it's a tattoo mag, whatever. If you love magazines, these are trying times. And subscriptions and support goes a long way. But I think you should buy Retro Gamer because we're basically unique. There's nothing like us on the market. We throw everything we can into each issue. We've not stopped the lockdown from basically doing what we would normally do. We just crack on. We've got a passionate staff. We've got a passionate freelance team. We're always looking for new writers. We're always looking for new stories to tell. We're always looking for new ways to engage with readers, and I think in the 15 years I've been on the mag, we've had like a 21 pence increase. So you can still buy Retro Gamer for like £5.20 now, and I defy you to find any other retro magazine out there which offers the same value as us. So show your support, and I'd really appreciate it. Thanks very much. Bye.
As I said, Retro Gamer is one of the 3 I currently have a print subscription to. But all of Future's current magazines do about as good a job as you can expect from the one remaining big hitter of games magazine publishing. with all the financial reality that implies. Next episode, we'll move on to the murky world of those games magazines aimed at children. Persuading kids to buy an actual paper magazine in 2020 feels like a loser's battle, but 4 titles are still trying it. We will look at all 4 of them, including the one I had to go into an actual shop and look really dodgy browsing the kids section to find. Don't let that be in vain, and join us next time. And perhaps consider supporting at least one of these magazines. Goodbye.